Pepsi. Pepsi. Yeah, we're now.
Pepsi. Well, okay, meeting is now started. Thank you everybody for coming to tonight's Audit meeting. And we've got a public session, and I believe Jackie would like to speak. And you've got 15 minutes. You're the only member of public that we've got today, Jackie. So you've got the full 15 minutes if you so wish.
Okay, right. All. I appreciate the platform to share this with you today. I have lived in Buckingham since 2001, and my lived experience of racism in plain sight has caused me to have race-based stress. I have dedicated most of my life to challenging injustice and those individuals whom have asserted their white privilege and entitlement. It is exhausting, but ignorance feeds my need for justice. The perception is that I'm often an angry or aggressive Black woman when I stand up for my rights. People never want to discuss what triggered me, just how I reacted. I am expected to be still, but being still in my life is not the norm. I count. I have worth. And my life has ultimate significance. I am not ashamed of my colour or biological features. I am not here to convert racists. If that makes anyone feel uncomfortable, then I encourage some reflection around this. I often hear, go back to where you come from, or sell your home and move. Know that this is a two-way process. It is a free country. If anyone feels their privileged and entitled life is threatened and not enhanced by Black and brown people presence in our community, they also have a choice to move. This is an island. And a wise historian said, Orwell once described Britain as being like a rich family sitting around the dinner table with no one wanting to talk about where the money came from. We have created this idea that real British history took place in Britain, and that is the island's story. Dismissing the truth of Black and brown people, their presence and contributions in Britain out of the main narrative. This is often used to justify the white person's sense of entitlement with no historic awareness. Look within our communities, institutions, such as the police and education, workplaces, and identify the people who have power.
Jackie?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for butting in. You did want to speak on items on the agenda, items 10 and 11.
Yeah,
if that's okay, we've got to stick with what's on the agenda tonight and not veer off. Is that okay? If you can just say what you wanted to say.
I'm not veering off. I'm nearly there. If you give me this opportunity to get there.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. In August 2020, a serving mayor of Buckingham had shared and endorsed a racist and hateful material on Facebook. I thought this was good. A quote from the racist and hateful material shared and endorsed, in my view, written by someone with limited history and social awareness. The most disturbing section of the post filming is ascribing Black people as, and I quote, "You rob us, you hijack us, you rape our daughters, but when a white police officer arrests a Black gang member or beats up an Asian drug dealer running from..."
Sorry, we do need to stick to items 10 and 11. This isn't for going over things that have happened. If you can just go to item 10, what you would like to say on the standing orders, and then item 11, which was the public involvement in council meetings. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Howard. Councillor Mordew, sorry.
Jackie, just a question. Yeah, I do feel for you. And
no.
you said that you've had several, accusations and comments made to you. Obviously, racism is a hate crime, which is prosecutable. Have you reported these to the police?
Oh yeah, I've dealt with that, and I've got my apology. What I needed to get through to you, or
No, I just wondered, so that if we approach the police, they will have a record of you approaching them as regarding a hate crime which has been committed against you.
They'll have 18 years worth.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to start on the item 10, which was outstanding orders.
The question I need to pose to you is, why are you refusing to issue a statement apologising for the comments that were made in that proposal?
Jackie, we're not talking about that one. We're talking about standing orders, item 10.
Right, let me go back. Have I missed something? Because I thought that's what this was about.
The public session, we've got to discuss things that are on the agenda tonight, and item 10, the one that you've wanted to speak on was standing orders, and then we've got item 11, which was the public involvement in council meetings.
Okay, right, so maybe we've got our wires crossed.
Is she gone?
Yeah, Jackie's still there, she's just...
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I said perhaps we've got our wires crossed. I was here to ascertain why the apology was not issued, or you've agreed not to issue the apology.
Yeah, no, Jackie, just to clarify, when you sent the email about this meeting, your email said you want to speak about items 10 and 11 on the agenda.
Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of the public session, is to talk about things on the agenda for the meeting. Okay. And it's the standing orders and how the public session are held that are on the agenda.
Right, I haven't got the agenda in front of me. Can somebody remind me?
So, well, there's a report against each one, which is on the website.
Yeah, I know.
But so agenda items 10 is to just receive and discuss a report from the town clerk about standing orders, which the report essentially proposes a minor change just to ensure the standing orders fit with the current legal framework around code of conduct complaints. And the second item is public involvement in meetings, and the discussion there is around what standing orders allow public involvement to be. So at the moment, members of the public can do what you're doing and speak at the start of the meeting. Yeah. And then if the chair wants to suspend standing order at some point, they can do that as well. Okay. So those are the items that you've asked to speak about.
Right, okay. So what I want to ask about is not on the agenda.
No.
It's not?
No, it's not.
Okay, right. Then I misread it and I misquoted. So therefore, then I don't need to speak anymore, redo my lovely speech that I've written.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to speak on the two items that you emailed about?
I do, and
Jackie, Jackie, would it help if I'm happy to have a conversation with you afterwards or on email to talk about other ways of engaging? Because obviously wires have been crossed, which is really unfortunate that you thought one thing was happening and different things happening.
Yeah.
Which isn't for any of us.
Yeah. So I think we've got our wires crossed there at some point, or I have anyway. But yeah, that would be good. If we can do that, Paul.
Yeah, I will contact you this evening or tomorrow.
Yeah, okay then. Well, it was lovely meeting you all. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. Bye.
It's not on the agenda, but can we invite Jackie, make sure she's invited to the diversity and inclusion groups? Thank you. Okay, so we don't have any other members of the public here. Let's jump straight into apologies for absence. Sorry, no apologies. Thank you. Okay, declarations of interest, anybody? Martin, Councillor Twain?
Buckingham Community Centre, do I need to?
Yes.
Would you like me to abstain? leave the room or be indifferent?
Is it of pecuniary interest is the question.
Or it's to do with the building, isn't it? Nothing to do with coming back to me.
No. I mean, at the moment, it's a decision to spend some money on doing a survey of the building, so it's hard to see that being.
Yeah, because you're responsible for the outside, so it's not really to do with our side of it, is it?
I think it's okay to discuss the building, but the report that comes back would be another different matter, because the report would be the property of the council on its own building. So that would be a completely different matter.
But if they didn't discuss it with us and the trustees, then it wouldn't make sense, would it?
Well,
Because we need to
Can
know
we
what's
get a
happening
poll
with
as
the
to-
building.
I'm actually finished talking. I'm not, but what I was saying in response to that, that I would think that when the report comes back, it would be a financial report. Then there would be a question of interest, because people in the report can't influence a report if it makes a decision on building an outside thing. It's all wrote down in a pretty common practice. I think at that point it would be a pecuniary interest, but I think it's fine to agree, spend money on the report. What it isn't fine to do is influence the outcome of the report. If you are in another place, that's quite simply plain and simple. I would have difficulty with that.
Well, that's not on the agenda, so
Well,
No.
I'll just.
no, I mean, ultimately, it's for councillors to decide yourselves whether you declare an interest or not. I mean, you have both declared an interest on, members have declared on their declaration of interest form, where they are trustees of the community hall, so that's all declared as a matter of
That's
public
already
record
done.
anyway.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the declaration is made, the question is around, should you abstain from a vote or leave the room? This evening is not a controversial subject. If it was a report recommending something that had a material impact on the finances of the community centre trust, then it might be a slightly different conversation.
Oh, Councillor Hobby.
Yeah, do we need to, well, those of us who are there, declare a financial interest in the purchase ledger, which includes the money that was put aside for the food for the twinning session, which works out to be about 24 or 25 quid a head. So I don't know whether we shouldn't declare that generally as a gift of any kind.
Well, you only have to declare gifts over £50.
Oh, right, okay, so it's not as much as that, okay.
No, you do.
Okay. Okay.
It was a civic event in which we've historically always done those civic events. They've always been funded by the council and organised by the events committee. And that's how they've done it. So there's no pecuniary interest in them. No, it's totally fine.
Okay. Sorry, Martin.
Actually, I don't see it on the agenda, but as we can speak in this a little bit, may I ask why item 16 is under the private session? I couldn't quite see any reason.
It includes a quote from a contractor, or in fact, it includes two different quotes. So
Okay.
it's possible that the council will reject at least one of those quotes, and so we shouldn't be making that information public.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Although it's of course still yet for members to agree to go to the private session, we get that point.
Two options.
Very good. They may agree not to.
All right. Item 3 minutes of last meeting. Are we happy to receive and accept those?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. And minutes of communication strategy group. Are you happy to receive those? Yeah, thank you. Item 5, annual return. So we have Appendix A, and then we've got the other two. Should we take the other two? Paul, do you want to speak on the budget?
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, just to highlight that this is to receive and to recommend to full council to agree. So this comes through resources to any more detailed analysis on before recommending to full council. This is the annual return you have every year, which Jode has completed. It's been to the internal auditor, who signed it all off, hasn't raised any issues of concern. There's only one issue they raised, which is on the spreadsheet here somewhere, which Jodie resolved before the final version was sent. That's been resolved in the papers you have before you. So everything is clean and happy on the annual return itself, so far as I can see, and so far as our internal auditor can see. So perhaps it's best to agree to recommend that to full council first and then discuss the other items, which are actually what the outturn was for the year. Details of that.
Okay, Robert?
I suppose we recommend it to full council, the office and Joe and the town clerk will work on it.
Yeah. Everybody happy with that?
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Martin?
Just on, I think it's our page 6 and their page 3, it says enter the publicly available website. It just, above that was Buckingham Town Council, but I wonder why we hadn't
And
appended.
Say that again, what page?
Page 3 of theirs and page 6 of ours.
So,
Page on Martin.
so it
Looks like that.
this is slightly confusing. So
Oh.
if you go through a few
Make it clear for me then, please.
So
Town clerk.
what happens is, and we could have done the papers differently, it's really complicated. So what happens is we produce a PDF, a 6-page PDF, and send it to the internal auditor, which is what you have in that packet. But then if you turn in the pack a couple of pages, so on their page numbers, it goes 5, 6,
Yeah.
and then over the page, so onto our page number 10, but again, page number 3.
Yeah.
So this is the same form again. So this is the version we sent to the internal auditor, which they've signed. So this is the signed version, which is one you really need to see. And cleverly, that does have our website.
It does, yes. Look at that. Clear as, yes.
Oh, Bell.
Okay, so that's been agreed anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the highlight for the year, so whatever we plan for the year, you always get to a point in March when last minute things happen, things you thought were going to happen haven't happened. And so the outturn is never exactly what I predicted at the start of March. It's going to be at the end of March. That's just life. Although we plan as closely as we can. What you will notice is that, so if you look at page, their page 5, now page 8 is the page with the key information on. So you will see that at the start of the year, so at the start of last year, March, there was 617,000 in the bank. The start of this year, so 12 months ago, there was 757,000 pounds in the bank. At the end of this year, going down to row 8, there is 741,000 in the bank. Now that makes it look like we've basically spent what we had coming in. However, if you look further through the report, actually we underspent by about £100,000 on average, which is partly because COVID's actually quite a lot of things we didn't do. So we didn't run events, and we did lose some income on Lace Hill, but actually our income came back much faster than we thought it would on Lace Hill and the market. So they both had really good years despite COVID. But at the same time, we also spent about £100,000 in earmark reserves, which is good because we put stuff in earmark reserves to be spent for the large part. So we spent money, as you know, on things the board agreed. So we've ended the year with roughly the same amount in the bank, but we've spent £100,000 in earmark reserve and saved about £100,000 in raw material. So I think that's a pretty good outcome for the year, actually. And when we get onto the earmark reserves conversation, that explains why we've got more earmark reserves.
Okay, that was Appendix A, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, kind of the others too as well. Really.
Yeah, so I was thinking we'll probably moved on to the other two. Right, Robin, is this on Appendix A or B and C? I was going to move on to B and C.
But just to say that if all throughout the year, the town clerk did actually give us briefings on what the underspend was and everything. So we had it all throughout the year and all what it was, which actually means that in the round, everything's put itself right, which is a fortunate position. There'll be other people who aren't in that position.
Yeah.
And as you said, those things that we didn't think we were going to do very well, we better than they were. So I think in all that, particularly the markets, we have to be pretty honest how well that stood up to everything. Yeah. I mean, the work that was put in by the office and staff in the markets to get that back up and running, and it's actually, I think it's earned more in this coming year than it did the preceding year before COVID. So I think, we have to note that's really good, and that's down to hard work of the staff, really.
Well, thank you. All right, so we're on B and C as well. Would anybody like to raise anything on those? Martin?
I think it should be noted and given praise and thanks to the staff that, of course, we had undertaken 4 monthly internal audits to get to this stage. So I think that's, a worthy note, because this is not a one-off. It may look like that, but it's a culmination of those internals to create this. So we should know where we are, at each bit, and nothing should be a surprise at the end.
Yeah, good point, thank you. John?
Are we going to discuss, I'm not sure which Appendix D we're going to discuss. There's an Appendix D in the pack, which is the internal audit summary, a kind of turquoise and blue one. And there's a summary income and expenditure report, which we don't seem to have. And then item 6.11, goes later, 5.1. So we're missing Appendix D as labelled in the agenda, and we are not having an appendix or the Appendix D in the pack that we were sent.
I've got a D.
I've got Appendix D too, but it's not the Appendix D that's indicated under budgets. This is the internal audit summary, where there are a number of issues that regard as being negative and what we actually asked about.
We're on the next item.
No, it's not. It's part of the annual return. Because it's part of the auditing process, isn't it?
So let's just go through them. So we've got Appendix A, which is the annual governance return.
Yeah. And that's,
about that.
that's 6 pages, isn't it?
Then we've got Appendix B, which is the one side sheet that we talked about, which is the internal audit findings of. We've then got the final income expenditure report for 21-22, so that's the year-end report for 21-22, which is Appendix C.
Yeah.
And then we have got
The reversed in order, and that's the problem. We've got 2 Appendix Ds.
we have, haven't we?
I think you're going in the second D then, John.
Oh, right, okay. Well, yeah.
I don't do this to mean no, just to let you know, but yeah, it's they're in the wrong order.
Yeah.
And we haven't got any item on the agenda to discuss the non-mentioned, shall we say, Appendix D, which is part of the audit.
Well, technically that should actually be labelled as part of Appendix B.
Yeah.
So
Is it? Oh, okay.
We can discuss it.
Yeah, so it's mislabeled.
Yeah.
So the second part of Appendix D is actually Appendix.
Summary and income
So
expenditure.
it's the detail. So it should go Appendix D and then income expenditure, but it's the wrong way around.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So that's the detail of the internal auditor's report.
My question is, there were 5 negatives against B, which was
Hang on, John, just which page are we on, John?
we're on page 22.
Okay.
So against B, it does delineate them below. There are 5 negatives against the authority compliance financial regulations, yada yada yada. And there's also 1 against J, which is accounting statements. And I think some of that is dealt with in the detail below, in terms of Appendix D, where it says number 1, audit extended trial balance agreed to joint accounting statements. But I'm not sure it deals with all 5 of the negatives.
So where it's got recommendations, the
Page 27 we're talking about.
so you've highlighted on page 22. It says there are 5 recommendations and then one recommendation further down, which is it correctly says it's 7 recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, there's only one observation which they've given us with this internal audit. So I've literally printed out everything we have from the internal auditor here, because I thought that was the safest thing. So I'm going to assume that those 7 were the mid-term recommendations which you saw last time, and I gave my comments on last time. So I think that would be because they see it as a whole year audit, but they don't rehash things further through. So we've already had the other 7.
So there are 14 recommendations here at the bottom of page 26, which is the expanded version of the previous couple of pages.
So I would still say logically that would be the sensible explanation. So referring back to the last time, when did we last have an internal auditor report to the meeting?
In February sometime.
Was there more before we had the preset, wasn't it?
Well, I'm just trying to do our job as scrutineers.
No, absolutely.
And there are 14, it says 14 recommendations.
21st of Feb.
And, sorry, what?
I'm answering, last time we had an internal audit, 21st of Feb.
Oh, right, okay.
Which meeting was that?
Oh, I don't know what meeting. That's when we had the audit.
We would have come here, then it would have went to council.
So if there are 14 recommendations, I would expect to see some note about what those 14 recommendations were in this report. I'm not saying we can't accept the audit, I'm just saying there's a detail missing.
Which, and if it was that we've already had it, actually you should see it again at the end of the year with everything listed, which would then fit with this, which would be a correct request. They didn't come to resources on the 21st of March. So unless they went straight to full council then. Makes sense.
I'll just take Robin quickly while you're looking. Robin?
Can I suggest that the questions that we've raised, or Councillor Harbour's raised, that because it's very stilted here, that we do a synopsis of those answers to those questions and take it to council, so that,
Yeah, that's fine.
so that when those answers are in that meeting at council, so when we agree them at council, so we're only recommending council agree them here, council will agree them. So if we do that, that allows the town clerk to answer those questions, which I know John will write his concerns, and then they can be taken into consideration rather than try to pick through page by page here tonight, which you only write what you said, John, that you're doing scrutiny, but the way it's laid out online, it flips from one thing to another. If you look at it in the paper copy, it's less than clear. So I think that, could I propose we do that?
Yeah, great.
Members happy with that?
Yeah.
That way we can move on sensibly. Any concerns we can take up outside the meeting, can't we?
Yeah.
Right, so we're going to do budgets. We're not going to do it.
Let's go back to page 21.
So,
We have to go back to page 21 now for the other appendix.
yeah,
So that is the summary of the report that just slightly precedes it, which is the income and expenditure for the year just gone.
okay, so.
Which is what it is.
Page 1, has anybody got anything on that one? And then we're going to ignore following 2 pages because they're part of the internal 3, 4, 5, 6.
29, please.
Gotcha. Right, page 29, appendix E.
So just to point out this, we're now to this year.
Yeah.
So we've done last year, we're into this year. And hopefully there's nothing surprising or untoward in first month or so's expenditure from this year. If anything's way over 100%, then that raises an issue.
Very much big concern.
John?
Just to note that we have spent 95% of our HR budget already. Was that a forward load?
Do you mind?
We have spent 95% of our HR budget. Was that a forward load for the?
That's what, so that's the contract with ELAS.
Oh,
So we paid them their money up front. So technically we've got £219 underspend on the year, which will stay there for the next 12 months.
Okay.
Right, page 2. Page 3. Also page 1, which is really awkward.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we discussed
That's the
number of
third
these
page
pages at
one.
our last resources
So
meeting.
what you have got for the first time on the pages is in the top left-hand corner, you've got a page number which runs right the way through the panel.
Okay.
So our new system. So if you focus on the top left-hand corner, ignore everything else.
Yeah.
So what page? Oh, it's the top left-hand corner.
Yeah.
you're on there.
Yeah. Not the other one.
Yeah, what page is it? Is it your?
Right, so we've gone through page 30. Page 31.
It was easy when you were doing page 5. No change numbering, that's thrown me completely.
Page 32.
Well, which is that, page 5 or page 6?
No, it's in the top left hand.
Well, I'm reading it from paper and it says page 5, page
This
6.
is page 1.
Yeah,
Have you not got the top left hand corner number in?
it says budget C.
It might be under your right in the top corner, where it's
Where is the hole?
Where the hole is.
Yeah.
not literally where the hole is.
Where it is.
Okay.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's where the hole is.
Yeah.
So I was going to, I'm sorry about that. It's just got a hole. There's a hole in the process. And it's on my paper. What's gone down that hole is the numbering. I do apologise.
Right, so next time I'm not going to have holes in pages.
It doesn't matter, but I wanted to just raise some questions, Chairman.
Oh,
It was on page 5 of the Appendix C, which is whatever it is that I go to in soft copy. Look, it was just to discuss the water and stuff at Maysill. They all look like.
So this is back on last year's spend.
Well, we do need it. That's on the page. We do need to actually. Can we bring that back as a subject matter at a future date? Because obviously.
Page 15.
Yeah. Yes.
page 15.
Yeah.
What I was trying to get to is it says the 30th of the 3rd 2022 on the page. I just think that can we just have a piece of work where we're going with that? It's unfair to ask it now because bills are going up and we do need to sort of.
So that's saying on the water.
Yeah, I mean the gas and water and everything.
Well, okay, so the water's okay because that's underspent.
Yeah, but I think we just need to bring that back sometime for us to get an understanding what the changes in conditions mean to us against the fact we've got solar panels on there. I don't think we need to discuss it tonight, but I just want to understand where how far behind we're going to be because when we budgeted in the precept for doing this, we didn't know that we were going to have fuel prices. We knew we were going to have a rise. We didn't know it was going to go up again in October like any other household in the country.
So can I suggest that we put something on the agenda for the next meeting on utility costs? That would be
Yeah,
helpful.
just so
And
I
just-
don't want to talk about it tonight, but I think it's just sensible for
Right,
us to
just
do
to
it.
say that was page 33 that Robin was looking at for the rest of us that don't have a whole. Okay, so if you want to turn your pages as I say, then you know the right one. All right, so
Robin, give me a second. I'll get on the right page. And
Right, okay, right page. Isn't this fun?
1, 2, 3.
do you know, like when you solve one problem and then another one appears?
Oh, I'll find you a problem.
No, it's not you, it's my problem.
there you go. Look. Number 33, just under the hole on that one.
Just under the hole. That's marvellous.
Paul, I just put a few spaces in where those page numbers
That's
go.
not
So
fair
it's
on
further
Paul
into.
It's not.
Okay, so page 34.
Yeah.
Anything on that? No. Page 35. Anything?
Just,
Yes, Robin.
Mr. Chairman, just to go back and I know the Cemetery Lodge pay all their own bills and whatever, but can we just have a note what our income on that and plus anything that comes up from that because it's a long time since we discussed the Cemetery Lodge in any great detail.
Didn't we put Cemetery Lodge on the last environment agenda for a report?
Well, this is the Environment Committee, is it?
It's definitely been somewhere
There's a
recently.
different way of looking at it.
Sure we have.
We discussed it in environment,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
We
this
can
is,
bring that report to resources.
I think the income of it, we need to look at the income against where it is.
Okay.
Special environment is environment.
No, it's fine. We can do that. Yeah. Okay. Page 36.
That's brilliant. That's marvellous.
Page 37. Page 38. And Appendix F, page 39. A couple of seconds to read it, that's quite a lot there. Okay,
I think they're all fine, I signed most.
40. Page 40. Page 41. Let's see, I'll get the pen in here.
Yeah,
Page 42. Page 43. Page 44.
I got 45, so.
Page 44 is still on. Page 45. Robin?
Just on devolved service chairman, the amount, I presume, where are we with devolved services and them paying us what we, I presume that figure in there is what we expected to have. We had that money.
No, so this is expenditure from devolved services. So we have the income line and the expenditure line.
Yeah.
So so this is telling you, this is in April, that's expenditure to the Stukely enterprise. So that's the social enterprise that
Yeah.
runs the low level grass cutting. Whereas the devolved services money we have coming in from Buckinghamshire Council, I'm not actually sure if we've received it yet or not, but if we haven't, we surely will do. And they did put it up by 3.5% for this year, pending review for next year. So this year it's gone up by 3.5%, and we don't yet know what the plan is, because it's all part of the whole transport.
Yeah.
Howard's got a hand up.
Yeah, can I just ask, you got invoice in from Trevor King, uniform for £259, I think it was. What was that for?
On page 45.
Oh,
Yeah, page 45.
Page 45, yeah.
teaching associates, that is.
I presume that's branded. Oh,
I think that's the new uniform for Blackburn and some stuff, bits of colour as well.
so that's New Green Spaces Officer clothing.
PPE and branded stuff.
Yeah,
Is that okay, Howard?
Yeah, okay. I assume it's for two, actually. Seems a lot of money just for one boiler suit.
Well, no, it's not.
I've
one
no
policy.
idea what these things are now.
But no, so for a brand new member of Green Spaces staff, we've got a whole set of PPE we need to get them, all of which is branded.
Yeah, that's what
So
I
you're
thought.
talking about
Okay.
Jackets, clothes, whole shebang.
Okay, page 46, earmark reserves. And there's a recommendation that we recommend report to full council.
Just to point out, the first table is what we previously agreed, but the second table on page 3 is the one that I'm recommending. So that's the one to focus on.
yeah.
John?
I propose we accept it.
Robin?
I'm happy to accept it. I emailed the town clerk, he corrected me and said what I thought was missing was there. So before I come to the meeting, it's on that basis, so they think I can ask him again. I thought something was missing, it wasn't. And so I think I agree with John, we'll propose to accept it.
All right, members happy with so that's full council, yeah? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, we've done earmark reserves. We've done the 5 months of money, but that's just us, right?
No, that's not.
That's not us, right? Yes, yeah. Okay, item 8, go on.
So if I can just highlight that this is the report which you have regularly. It's almost exactly the same as the last version of the report. It's very slightly changed the final code bit at the end to make it a bit more sustainable. So just to say things which will always be true. But really, there is a future risk from COVID or something similar in the future. But we kind of remember what that did to us last time, which financially wasn't.
John, you had your hand up, was that?
Yeah, just move that we note this and accept it.
Okay, Robin and then Martin.
Only just to say that it reads okay. The only thing I was going to ask is why has it got Christmas lights in there, and what is that? Because I haven't had a note to tell me.
What number are we on?
TDA Christmas lights to 2,207.
Oh, no, not on the financial risk assessment. We've agreed the earmark reserves, Robin.
Yeah.
It says the financial risk assessment.
No, that's the earmark reserves. Robin.
Okay, right, that's fine. Well, the financial risk assessment is missing out of the paper.
No, that's what you're looking at now. That's the colour coded one.
Okay, right, fine. We'll go on that one. Right, okay. Apologise.
Right, Martin.
Yeah, sorry. Just a correction, if I may, before we recommend it. On page, here we go. On page 50, which is the first page of it all, second line, risk assessment. 3. 1 times 4 doesn't equal 3.
Thank you, Councillor.
That's all right.
I will correct that.
You get the biscuits tonight.
Well, I don't know, you did a strong one there as well on the previous appendices.
Right, Robin.
Just a broad statement then, with that not accurately managed or something.
That means that the risk is that if we fail to properly claim VAT or declare VAT, then we'd either pay too much or not enough.
That's what, yeah, okay, that's fine. So what Joe's doing, making sure we claim it as we go along, I expect.
Absolutely.
So we don't try and do it all at the end and then miss something. Yeah, thank you.
Robin.
Number 11. We should discuss this bank and security access to finance. We obviously bank with Lloyds Bank. Lloyds Bank is leaving Buckingham. Is that something we should discuss at some point? As they're no longer a local bank. Does it make any difference to us? Probably not on a security basis, but we are, if there was a bank in Buckingham, which is a local bank, would we then bring it back to discuss moving our money to a local bank? Because we're basically, our money's now going, leaving Buckingham. I know the old tradition was that we banked with them because they've been there forever and supported the town. Their horses on the telly, we're with you. They're clearly not. They've galloped off across the paddock in Buckingham. And they're not with us at all. They've galloped off in the distance. So
No use for your shovel then?
well, no use of my shovel. So can I just suggest that we look at, there's absolutely nothing tying us to Lloyds Bank now in the sense of finance, and maybe we should at some point look whether there's better, equally as safe options for us, because we haven't got a local bank.
Not got any local banks.
No, we're not supporting a local, when we were there, because we knew that
Yeah.
we employed local people,
Yeah.
and all the good reasons why we did it historically have gone. So our loyalty can't be to Lloyds Bank anymore.
Would you like a report brought back, would you?
Yeah, just at some point we should rationalise whether there's a better way of banking, which saves us money and works better for the office. And simple, really. It's an opportunity.
I mean, we could put on the agenda for next meeting banking arrangements. I mean, my 2 initial comments would be firstly that I'm not aware of other banks that do a better arrangement for town and parish councils. I'm not saying Lloyds is brilliant, they're okay. And from talking to other clerks, people get frustrated with every bank, so I think there's much to move to. The immediate issue for us is cash and money. So at the moment, TIC staff and office staff take money, cash money into Lloyds. We think we'll be able to do that into the post office. That's a facility they have. So assuming that's okay, it's kind of, that might mean a longer queue, but apart from that, and I guess we will want to support the post office.
I noticed Howard's got his hand up before, Howard, just to say, I just want to look at it so that we've looked at it.
Yeah,
I don't want to
fine.
make any
Can we
suggestions.
just let Paul finish what you were saying there?
I think that's.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Howard?
Yeah, that's fair enough, Robin. But obviously these days everything is electronic, and Lloyds might be a bit of a pain. But once you're established in there and you've got all the mandates signed with a bank, and you set up the payment system, I'd be very loath to move it unless there's a genuine, very good reason for doing it. there are moves to set up another functioning cash transaction service in Buckingham, but that is only for payment of checks and cash, and really I don't see they can offer much more than the post office does. Checks we can pay into Lloyd's by taking a photograph. It's not ideal, but I think there's still one in, the nearest one to us will be Brackley.
Yeah.
I think we've got to accept that until we can find an alternative, we carry on with Lloyd's.
Yeah, I mean, if we bring a report back, then we can go for the options. Yeah, members happy for that? Yeah, thank you. Anything additional, Robin, and then Martin?
Just to ask whether it's actually, if it's worth just working out the difference of driving to Brackley. It's not that far, and it has got a great thing with Brackley. They've got their own health centre and they've got their own town hall. Which they own.
Could be in the report.
Yeah, you know, they come on to those.
Martin, then
The old
Margaret.
town hall's done.
Martin.
Yeah, sorry, throughout the risk assessment report, can you change all the 6s to orange, please? Not greens. Or change the 6 to green and not orange.
Yeah.
Margaret?
Just to say, in response to that suggestion about driving to Brackley, I don't think that would meet very well with our climate emergency action plan. And driving using fossil fuels, for awareness, we've got an electric vehicle,
which we have.
might be better, but you know, in terms of staff time as well, as that journey time, and I don't think that makes, to me, it doesn't make sense if we can do it electronically.
We can discuss that when the report comes back. Yeah, that's fine. But I think we've agreed that we'll do a report and we can have a proper discussion.
They got
Then,
a
Robin, please. Okay. Right, action report, Appendix H, and it's item 9. First page, anybody got anything they would like to discuss on that page? Right. Next page, which is 74 in the corner, can't see that. Anything on there? No, we happy to agree with this?
Can I just,
Go on, you start, Peter.
just that there is an action missing, which at the last meeting, we talked about the formatting of reports, and Councillor Harvey said he was going to send in some suggestions for formatting reports. So we were then going to come forward with a different option for something that might be slightly easier to read. Councillor Harvey has sent in his suggestions. We've not yet worked out how to do exactly what would be ideal, but hopefully by the next meeting we'll have a different format to have a.
Just 757/21 letter sent, awaiting response over debits. That was something that we, whatever, and then the other point, which was Councillor Morge's recommendation, that's on the agenda. So, but when was the letter sent? Just out of interest.
Quite recently.
Okay, in which case we won't have got a response.
No.
Okay. Right. I'm just going to put the top. And then, right, so that's done. Standing orders, item 10. You've got reports to read and discuss. And the recommendation is that we amend section 14.d of standing orders to show to the version shown in section 4 below. John?
Yeah, I support this obviously because it brings it into line with what we've been advised is case law. That means we have and had no choice other than to accept the sanctions and reactions, responses, whatever, to the breach. So I think we have to change this because obviously I've killed outstanding orders were out of kilter. I would be interested to say, I think also we should write to now and say that they should change their boilerplate. But our standing orders reflect the boilerplate on the now website, and I think they ought to be changing that too, given that this case law happened now several years ago, and the latest iteration of the boilerplate standing orders is some time after that. And Mr. Tripp here need to change their boilerplate. I think we should alert them to that.
That's fine, yeah. Okay.
Quite happy to agree with the recommendation. Just one question, Tampa. Will our standing orders differ greatly after doing that? I don't think they will. With Buckinghamshire councils, we basically mirrored a lot of their standing orders.
So this doesn't, they don't have this in their standing orders because this is parish council specific.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect.
So most of the other stuff it mirrors. This is just separate. It's basically
So our code of conduct mirrors their code
Yes.
of conduct. So our standing orders are quite different because they fit us
Yeah,
as a council.
yeah.
rather
But
than-
where it
So
goes-
it doesn't affect our relationship with them.
Okay, so John,
So we agree that we're going to write to now and alert them.
yeah,
That's agreed. Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that, yeah.
and the change of the wording, are we happy to agree the change of wording?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for that together. Public involvement in council meetings is number 11. Receive and discuss Paul's report.
So again, this is a subject which came up after recent events about the public's involvement in meetings. My recommendation is that we leave things as they are because it's at the moment members of the public can speak to members of any committee about anything on the agenda for that meeting, which is totally consistent with recommended standing orders. And we do have the practice where the chair can recommend to the meeting that we suspend standing orders for someone to speak midway through, which we do periodically when that's appropriate to the meeting. But standing orders, if you say that public speaking, that's not an opportunity to start a debate. That's a chance for a member of the public to give their view, possibly ask questions which members may or may not respond to there, and then they may respond to in writing. So what we do at the moment, I think, works and gives quite a lot of flexibility to the chair of the meeting to respond appropriately in different situations.
Robin,
Only thing I would say, that's the problem we've got, is to keep it saying, one thing that might make things better is that, just as a rule of thumb, when we respond to a member of the public who's wrote in to say they're going to come, that we make them aware of our standard orders in doing the public session. Because we've had situations where members of the public come and they seem quite put off that something we would discuss with them, other things we won't, and they seem quite put off and understand why we're doing it, which is because that's our standing orders. We don't necessarily respond.
can I just say something that this happened years ago, but I wrote something, and I don't know, maybe Louise has adapted it since then, that we have on our website what you can and can't do attending our meetings. So the information is on our website, it has been for many years, pre-COVID, way back. So if they wanted to find that information out, it is there for them.
I'm just thinking it's just a nice thing to have.
Reminder.
That when they write in and say they're coming to a council meeting, in the response, we just point them to what our standing orders are to do with public session, so that when they come to the public session, they're not surprised if there is no discussion with them, because sometimes sometimes they've been quite cross that we don't respond because it's something we wouldn't respond to. And then we can't turn around and say, well, our standing orders say that, and they'll say, well, I haven't seen them. And when we'll say, well, it's on the website, to which they'll say, well, am I supposed to look at the website before I come to a meeting in the public? And then they'll get cross. So I think if we just automatically just put it in the response to them, if they respond by here, it just means there's no conclusion, there's no confusion. When a member of the public comes, they've already been given that information, and it allows whoever he or she is chairing the meeting to know that they've had that.
Happy?
Yeah.
Just,
I think it's just a tidying up thing.
Martin.
Okay, got a few things here. If I'm just trying to picture it in my mind, when we ask the members of the public if they've got anything to say, it says may make representations, answer questions, but at that point, I suppose you're inferring that the councillors would then ask a question for them to then answer. Is that what you're sort of
Yeah,
suggesting there?
which does sometimes happen.
Yeah.
It does. Okay. And then F and G, can we not somehow combine those? Because there's one that says should not exceed 15 minutes unless directed by the chairman, secretary, and then the other one shall not speak more than 15 minutes, but there's no sort of, I know it says in accordance with 3 above, but it's going sort of back and forth a little bit,
Yeah.
saying the same sort of thing.
It is. Really. Yeah,
Just in a different line,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I'm happy with it, to be honest, Martin, because it does leave the mayor or the chair flexibility to judge a situation as it is in the room. And we've been lucky that we have people who can generally judge that situation and make that decision based on where we are.
I've got no dispute with Ed.
I-
I'm just
I-
almost saying, you know, we
it's
need
always-
G really.
No, I can take something out, we then get to a situation, you remove something which has been in there for God knows how many years, and then we'll find that way we took it out because it will rise a problem later on. So my advice is to leave it as it is and leave that to the mayor and the chair of the committee to actually deliberate that in the meeting. They always have the town clerk for advice, and that's always how we should operate. You know, if they.
What do other members think? Margaret?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's in the document, but I just wonder, you know, in light of the last few meetings that we've had where we've had members of the public, how welcome they've felt. And, you know, given that they're not going to be so familiar with standing, they're unlikely to be so familiar with standing orders. They might be because of their past experiences. Whether there is any way we can make people feel welcome, if you know what I mean, because it's a really important thing that public come along and engage with us, and so we need to do whatever we can to enable that. And when somebody has come, that they feel it was worth it, that they were listened to, and you know that it made that, because some people will feel quite nervous about coming along to this kind of meeting. And you would want people to feel that it had been worth that effort that they've put into coming.
Yeah, especially something like full council where you've got everybody here that can. Yeah. So do you have any suggestions?
Well, that's the trouble, isn't
Yeah.
it? I don't know, but if anybody, you know, I'm just not sure that people who have come along have necessarily felt that A, they were really welcome, and B, that they were properly listened to. I don't know. Maybe that's not reasonable.
I mean, if I could just make a couple of comments. I think, part of that is down to how a meeting's chaired and everybody's actually feeling and behaviour, and it's difficult often at the start of a meeting, busting in, all chatting to each other and getting your papers, to actually think there's a stranger in the room who doesn't actually know what's going on and what's about to happen to them. Whereas for us, it's a comfort zone, probably for you, to some extent maybe. Certainly when members of the public comes in, Paula or someone will always get hold of them as soon as they walk in the door and get their name and hopefully tell them a little bit about what's going to happen. And some people need that, some people don't. It is interesting about Zoom actually, because I think people will probably get a little bit less welcome on Zoom than they do walking in the room. If you walk in the room, you do have a personal interaction with someone. Whereas Zoom, it very much tends to be, here's a face, hello, right now we're about to do something to you, now speak to us. And it's harder to do it from a camera into the room than it is by being present in the room as well. So that probably is something we all need to think about a bit. Now we do, when people email, I think we are quite good. We'll do what Councillor Stutchbury suggested when we do that. But we're generally quite good at supporting people beforehand with information. The website's not bad.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the last interim that we had Karen here and Rebecca on there, and how their experiences might have felt to them different because they're both here for the same thing, but both on different platforms. So, but I don't think, and this is personally to you, that you could have done anything different in that meeting. I think you were welcoming, and you apologised for a wording that you'd said, and you know, from a councillor's point of view, I don't think you could have done anything different, but they might feel differently. So whether we get feedback from them perhaps on You know, we obviously, things that we can do and things that we can't change, but that might be a way forward. John and then Robin?
I think what you just said there is a good idea, that we should solicit some feedback from people who have recently, presented to the council. Not just the most recent, but maybe over the last, 2 or 3 months, where it's reasonably still fresh in their mind and maybe in ours too. And ask them maybe to complete, I don't know, maybe some sort of questionnaire.
Yeah.
Anonymously, so they could give their full and frank feedback. Because although I utterly respect the town clerk, I'm sure you had a good conversation with any other people who've been here, they might still not want to say what they really felt. And I think if there's a way in which we could create some sort of, I don't know, survey monkey type thing that was anonymous, I think it would help us all, including those who chair meetings like yourself and Margaret and so on, to hear that feedback. For me, when the public are here, I very, very rarely ask them questions, unless it's to kind of clarify something. Because I think our main role at that point as a set of councillors is to listen really, really hard. And it may be hard to listen to what they've got to say, but just listen and give them the space to say what they want to say. And I think getting some feedback from the people who've been here recently would be a very good thing, and I would commend that to the town clerk. And if we agree that here, then that's a job of the town clerk to create that process. And I think then the report should come back based upon the comments in that small anonymous survey that we should all hear, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that's too difficult thing to do. Robin and then Anthony.
I think what you have to realise that in my limited time being here, when you come to a council meeting, everyone used to be much better tightly dressed, as Derek would say. People used to dress to come to council. That's gone. So it's more informal than it used to be, if you know what I mean. So it's less formal. We've always made people welcome, but you have got a statutory legal decisions you're taking within a meeting, and there has to be a definite divide between the meeting and the public session, which the mayor and other chairmen respect greatly. I can only say that I can assure you the problems, which are huge, that we have at times in the meetings will never be as bad as the time that the district council decided to do a topple test in Buckingham, and we had to have a meeting with a room of God knows how many members of people, really angry because they thought the town council had toppled all their graves. In actual fact, we hadn't, because the district council would have buried authority at the time and it hadn't transferred to us. I had to chair that meeting, and I was mayor at the time. It was never a great experience because my job was to legally make sure the meeting got conducted properly. And in doing that, sometimes you put yourself in harm's way because you have a duty to make sure that everyone in the meeting is safe and it's conducted. I do remember most people I was in the room with, I think, Howard, and I think most other people stood in the kitchen of the community centre at the time. And I think that it was quite a bunch of meetings. I think that we haven't seen as bad as things can be. And I think that if we're going to get people to consult with us, I think we need to look at what it is we're asking them to consult about rather than asking them.
I think it's different with not asking them to consult, it's getting feedback, and then we discuss it as a council.
Yeah, I think we need to be specific about how we want that feedback to come in, because we want it to be both productive, both beneficial, and an avenue for improvement, not creating an avenue to continue a known criticism. So it's got to be constructive. So I think we need to have something come back which perhaps could be agreed with the proposer, so that we make sure that it actually works, and we don't, through doing that, then create another situation where you can cause offence because you've opened the door to someone and they expect something to come from it. And if there's no repulse from it, that there's no way that you can answer those questions because
Be clear.
we have to be clear what we're trying to do to make sure that we actually manage that so that we actually are reactive. And I think it's a good idea, but we have to be clear what we're actually asking the town
our
clerk to
expectations
do. And I think that could be done outside the meeting and brought back and agreed thereafter. I don't think that, I don't know what it is. And Margaret and the mayor said, well, how are we going to do that? I think that was one point, really.
Okay, Anthony, and then Paul wanted to say something.
Okay, I was going to just move to something subtly different. Section F, the period of time designated, and it says shall not exceed 15 minutes. Could we add in total so that we remove any ambiguity about the fact that people might come along and think they can speak for 15 minutes, even though there's other people waiting?
Yeah, and members happy with adding that?
Yeah.
That's sensible.
Thank you.
Martin?
That's a very good point, Councillor Ralph, because having stared at this while there were all the other debates going on and my other comments about F and G, I think on G, just like we've sort of amended F, if we said an individual member of the public shall not speak for more than 50 minutes. So that stops a person sort of taking over and bombarding the whole meeting, because whatever happens with the chairman's ability to flex it all, only an individual person can only speak for 15 minutes for the whole total of time, even if the chairman says, we'll extend this for an hour. Which they have that ability, because only that one person can speak for 15 minutes, and therefore, I think that's what G is trying to get at there. Break it down.
Okay, so what I've just put on the screen is this is NAUT's model for it. So you should see an F in NAUT model.
Yeah.
It doesn't state the times for F or G. So
no, because that's at our discretion, isn't it?
Yeah, so 15 minutes is kind of standard. So what you could have in this version, as Claire's just pointed out to me, is you could have shall not exceed the time designated for public participation shall not exceed 15 minutes. And then you could have, subject to that, a member of the public or an individual shall not speak for more than 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So at the moment, we allow, if it's one person, we allow them to speak for 15 minutes.
Correct.
We just say it's 15 minutes, and whoever's there, we divide it by that number of people. Whereas some councils are much harsher, so you get 3 minutes or you get 5 minutes, and that's your lot. But I've never sat here and thought, why do we let an individual person speak for more than 5 minutes? And it's at the chair's or the meeting's discretion if you want to extend it anyway in certain circumstances. And I'm not sure we've ever had a big issue with this being an issue. But that's why there are the two sections, so you could flex it if you wanted to that way.
Robin, additional.
It is additional. It's always additional. Because I'm saying something additional. To what I said before, we could always go down the route of written public questions, in which case, if we wanted to look at it, what I'm saying is you have a written public question, but it has to be in a serious period of time before a meeting, which would then allow a written public response to that question, which would be given by the chair of the meeting.
There's an additional thing.
If you wanted to make better engagement, because when you get an issue of concern, you have a written question which can be submitted to the council, maybe within so many enough days before meeting to allow a written response to be prepared for the meeting, which would be read out either by the town clerk or be read out by the chair of the meeting. Because if you've got something which is going to be asked and someone's not, if they're present at the meeting and then they feel they haven't got a response, if they write in good time, same way as select committees allegedly allow members of the public to write a question in, come to a select committee, you'll get a verbal written response at the meeting and a written response in the minutes. We could go down that way of being more engaging and more formal engaging, so that when they've said something, they can see that it's actually taken note of. There's a written response to the question, which would be a legal response to the question, the council's view, and that would go in the minutes. And that way, that if we wanted to add that as additional, I think it's something which would, I've always liked written questions. But I think it's not for the necessarily for the councillors for the officers in our level, but I think for the public it's something worth considering. Though I wouldn't, until you've looked at how it could work, I'm not going to suggest now to bounce members into doing it. But I think it's something that could work, and it would allow the mayor at full council. We could have written questions for full council, which is the most serious meeting, at which point the mayor would answer those questions. It's a way of, if you're worried about how you engage with the public, and that way it keeps it in a legal framework. A difficult contested issue gets a proper legal written response, and that way people can't suggest that they haven't been consulted.
Right, so because with your written questions, I'm not sure if you mean that somebody does a written question and then they get their answer in the public session, or somebody in the public session comes and gets a written response as well as the verbal response. Which is it?
What I'm suggesting is, if it's something so serious that they feel so rightfully cross about, they can write a written question to
Ahead of the meeting.
Ahead of the meeting.
And then get
Then what would happen then is the town clerk, who's the legal officer of the meeting, would draft the position response to
for
it.
the mayor then.
For the mayor to read out at council,
or chairman.
or the chairman, which committee can do. But I think it's something we have to discuss, but I understand why I would want to do it, because I use
Right,
those
should we
things a
go
lot.
Should we go for discussions? John?
Yeah, just I agree with Robin's idea. I think that's worth exploring. But I don't agree with trying to create it now.
No, I
It's
don't.
not on the agenda. I'd say that again, let's ask the town clerk to go away and prepare a short report on how we might integrate written questions into our public listening process.
Yeah.
Neither was the other
Okay.
thing, but
And so I think, let's ask the town clerk to come back with a report on that, and then we can consider it carefully. As he's going to also do, and I'm happy to help, obviously,
yeah, with the other
ask some questions of those who've been here recently presenting to us as to what the experience was like for them and how they would improve things. And they might come up with written questions too with their answers, of course. So if we can do both things,
discard what doesn't work.
we can then move on.
Right, so is the members happy that Paul brings back a report on written questions and how that would work? And then we can discuss that at our next meeting. Happy?
Agreed, yeah.
I
And
don't
we do the
Should make it on the
and we
hot
do the
now.
feedback report as well.
Yeah.
Do we
Yeah.
agree on that?
I'm proposing that we agree on that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right, so are we happy to do the change, the
Agreed.
recommendation in the report? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right. What's the long, you started it, Ryan. At the start as well, which is quite good because you're normally late.
Standing order says.
It's allowed in standing order to try to be late for every meeting. It's allowed.
Yeah, exactly. Seconded.
Right, so grants review, item 12 is our next one. See and discuss the report from Louise. Did you want to say anything for this one, Paul?
Just to note, you have had an additional email, and that's in your pack as well, which is additional feedback from people, which is lovely, actually.
Yeah, it's good.
So I think that's really good. I think the process has worked really well. We've got more people on 4-year grants, and that's better for them and better for us. We're spending a bit less on 1-year grants now, but that's because there are more people on 4-year grants, so that is fine. And the recommendations are that where we've got the £2,000, which we agreed a while ago from contingencies that should go to BCS emergency, we'll put that into an earmark reserve in years like last year when it's not spent. And that is in the earmark reserve list you just agreed to recommend. And that we amend the application form, including to give information which gives some real clarity about reserves, which is what Councillor Schreier raised previously. Sorry, but when I say VCSE, I mean voluntary community and social enterprise organisations. I do apologise.
Acronyms, again.
John?
It's also now commonly referred to as VCFF. VCFSE, which is voluntary community faith and social enterprises.
Okay.
There we go. I would say yes, I support all these recommendations. I propose that we accept them, but I'd also add an additional one: is that next year when we go through the round, we ask for feedback from not only those who are successful in getting grants, but also those who just applied for the information, and to those who weren't successful, so that we get that whole feedback from everybody in a sense. So because obviously people who are successful are going to be feeling very great about the process because they just got some money from us. I think it'd be useful to know whether the people who look into it and then don't apply, why they don't apply, and those who do apply then that don't get it, how they then feel about the process too. I think we need to have feedback from all three groups as well, not just as is currently the group that actually got the money. That's all I'm saying. So next year we'll do the full thing.
Just to ask a question for you, Chair. This, if we agree on this here process under our standing orders and our, that this is where we agree, or is this would this then go to council? My concern is that when it comes to grants, because we rightfully, because of the way the preset meetings were really strange, that we would discuss the grants before we discussed the precept, and then discuss the precept. So we changed that, so we discussed it in the finance others, so that we don't lose people in the council who aren't sat on this committee, which is always an important thing that they're informed. How are we going to make sure that they understand what the process is? Because they may have only joined the council this year. The process was there quite quickly after joining the council. Really, it's only halfway through your time as a year being a councillor. We need to make sure that they understand the process, because what you are in danger doing is, because if someone doesn't understand it, you can get loads of recommendations to change it completely from where it is, because for not understanding it, not for understanding the logic. So I think if we do discuss it, there needs to be a note against why we did what we did, what was the evidence for doing it, and why we did it, and why we're doing it now. Because new councillors might quite rightly come onto a committee and change, and then when they get to it, they find that it doesn't suit their way of thinking. But it's officers have spent many hours getting us to where we have. And I just think there needs to be an explanation in there, because I've noticed that the same people sit on finance now as has sat on finance for a number of years. Other people don't.
And then new councillors on this one, you mean?
Yeah, so if we have a change of people on this council committee next year, I don't know, the clerk will know who's coming on the committee next year, I haven't looked. It could be that those people coming on the committee might quite rightly want to ask, why do we do that? Which is a pretty normal question to ask, but I think we just need a note, explanation note for why we took decisions we are. I think they work very well, and I think we've amended it really sensibly over the years to make it work.
But you asked that under, is this going to full council?
Yeah.
Because they might question it.
Yeah,
Full
I just
council.
want to make sure that the councillors, maybe I phrased it wrong, Chairman, that the councillors actually understand the process.
At full council.
At full council as we're doing.
Okay.
So would that be that, because we can't guarantee they'll read the minutes. We've had evidence of councillors
Who will be
not
there?
reading the minutes. So how do we do that for you, Chair, to make sure that when we have the new committee come forward, that they are an understanding of it is?
This is a second thing, because the first one was about full council
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
Margaret?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that when, after the elections, Paul did a very good series of, I'm trying to think what they were called.
Inductions.
Inductions, thank you. And that related to each committee. And I would imagine that that's not been thrown away. And if there were any new councillors coming to this committee for the first time, it would be worth sending them that information. It might even be worth all of us looking at it again, to be honest. It's certainly be worth my while looking at it again.
I think Paul wanted a quick meeting, so he asked me not to come. No, he didn't.
But that would, you know, I think we will have all the information there that anybody coming fresh to this committee would need. It's already there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
I like that, and then the same could be said for the other, if
Yeah.
we're not
Well,
If I could just come back, that's very good, Margaret, but doesn't address the
full council bit.
the bit about the grants and the way we do what we do. I
Right,
presume
so
that's in
that's
it.
all
If
on
it's in
that
it,
bit.
that's fine.
Yeah, and so we have got that induction stuff, and we have got the original grants review, which is where all this came from. So that documentation is still there, and we do circulate.
Thank you, that's fine then.
What we could do, in fact, what I'm sure we will do is when we launch grant applications for this year, we will give full council a note to remind everybody about the process and what's going on. So everybody does know and can promote it to their own.
Yeah, it's probably me being very slow here, but you've mentioned the new grants process this year. So will there be another cycle of 4-year grants this year?
No. So
There'll only be the 1-year grant.
yes. So for the
So
next
we-
3 years, it's 1-year grants only.
Okay, thank you.
Just to make sure that we've agreed that we're going to next year always ask all the people who express an interest, not just those who are successful, but those who don't get the money and those who don't end up applying. But we ask all those people.
Are members happy to do that, to ask everybody, regardless of win or lose,
Yeah.
that we ask them for their feedback?
Win, lose, or not.
I don't think it's
Apply.
Yeah.
They may have not qualified for it.
Martin, you had your hand up.
Yeah. So thank you for the report. It's interesting that only recommendation 1.1.2 is summarised out of the report. There's no other recommendations actually highlighted in the report. But in item 1.1.2, in every year, so bear with me, in every year the emergency grant funding is not taken up for the £2,000 budget be added to the earmarked reserves VCSE groups. When I read that, does that mean in 2 years' time we've got £4,000 against that?
Potentially.
Oh, okay. So we're going to add £2,000 each year and keep the reserve of the previous year in there? Or are we just saying we will always keep £2,000 in the reserve?
So the recommendation is every year to put £2,000 in it.
And it will go up by £2,000 unless it's used.
Yes.
Like a prize fund.
In which case, should we not have a cap in there?
Yeah.
If that is the case, or should we not just keep £2,000 as a figure and not increase it year on year?
So you propose to amend it to.
I don't know. I would like a debate as to how it would go.
These aren't recommended, but this is what we are here to discuss. So if that is a proposal, then
Well, I'd like to see how we feel about that. I'm not so sure I feel it going up and up is a great thing without a cap, but I also am okay with a constant £2,000 way of looking at it as well.
okay, thank you, Anthony.
As I recall from our last meeting when we discussed this, we did exactly that. We talked about a cap. Because we were concerned that if it wasn't taken up, this could be like Topsy, it would grow. And I had imagined, or I seemed to, certainly was in my mind at the time, that sort of after, say, 5 years, when there's potentially 10 grand in there, automatically it would kind of fall off the back of it all the time. And the 2 grand coming in, a 2 grand would be hiked out of the reserve and put back to general, so that we don't get into a situation. And I seem to remember us talking about that last time. So I would certainly support Martin's idea of a cap, because that shows a degree of control.
Yeah, it should be. I would be worried about having a lot of money in there.
And I also, if I may, Chair, I seem to remember our conversation was that the 2,000 should look after us, but in case there was something more substantial, we may very well have more than 2,000 in, which would give us a comfort cushion if some emergency really did arise that exceeded the 2,000. Hence, we got flexibility, but by the same token, we've got a cap to not get silly about it.
Yeah. John, no, Morgan?
I can see the logic behind the cap. But also I can see the logic of not knowing what the future's going to hold.
Yeah.
We can be fairly sure that we haven't seen the last of flooding in Buckingham. We can be fairly sure that that the impact of COVID has not gone away. And who knows what will happen next winter or the winter after. There may be another coronavirus of some description. And also we're facing the war that is closer to us than it has ever been for a long while. And who knows what's going to happen and how the Ukrainian conflict might escalate. So, and all of the decisions we make here in this council are all reversible after 6 months anyway. But if members feel that it would look better if we put, I don't know, £10,000 cap on it, and then we can alter that later on, after 5 years, we can suspend it or stop paying money in or whatever it must be. I'm cool with that, but I do want to make the point that we don't know the future. It is a volatile, uncertain, unstable future that we're living in at the moment, and having reserves in place is no bad thing.
Robin, and then Margaret, and then Geraldine.
I think we shouldn't really worry about trying to amend anything today because, quite frankly, it's wrong. What we do have is a preset meeting. At a preset meeting, we'll present the grants. At that point, if members think that we've got £10,000 in grants and you've balanced in the entire budget of the council and we haven't had a use for that grant, by that time, it would be at that meeting at the precept at the end of the setting the new financial year that you would say, well, we need to balance the budget tonight. We've got such and such in grants there. We haven't used it for 4 to 5 years. Would we need to keep that money there for grants? Will we bring it back in to balance the budget? I think that's what the precept meeting is there for. You can't set a precept at every meeting, which is effectively what we're trying to do here. And we set a precept for the year, and it's the next precept meeting when we set the grants, and the meeting after that we'll set the level for the grants. If the precept says the percentage we set plus the earmark reserves is wrong, members will clearly remember the discussions and reports they've had today, and I will, yeah. And they'll come back and say, I think we've got too much money in there, as we were worried about, and it's got up to £10,000 in there. Is that an appropriate thing to be using as savings? Which is the right meeting to have the discussion, because it includes the entire council in those discussions about what you do with that money in the precept meeting. Then the grants bit will follow afterwards, will deliberate on what the council's decision is.
Have you been to the precept? How quickly they finish?
I did a precept meeting once. It went on to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They have been in the past. We've been very well behaved in recent years, but they have gone on to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right, so you're saying that we shouldn't have a cap on it. We've got Martin, Anthony, and John. I think we do. Margaret, and then Geraldine, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, just by the nature of it, emergency grant funding is unpredictable. And as John already mentioned, if we did have, or I shouldn't say if, when we have another flooding event, there could be numerous voluntary and community groups who are impacted by the flooding. And we therefore, we're not talking about £2,000 for one organisation. It might be that there are 5 or 6 organisations who suddenly, unpredictably, have a need for a grant in order to be able to keep their service running. So I think we do need this sort of emergency fund, which, as I said, by very nature of it is unpredictable. But I do take the point that we can't go on letting it increase ad infinitum. But I guess there are other ways if an emergency arises that we could find money if we needed to. But it could be next year. It might not be for another 5, 10 years. We just don't know by the nature of it.
Okay, thank you. Geraldine?
Yeah, I think £10,000 is probably too far to go. I would err at 6, because we have got emergency funds available, haven't we, in contingencies things, if we really needed a lot more money. But I would be reluctant to go to 10.
Okay, so on the table we don't have a capital, we have a cap of 10,000, or we have a cap of 6.
Can I just correct the contingency thing for you, Jen? Contingencies are money set aside, which the council sets aside for itself. What we can't use is contingencies, which are set aside for the council for outside things necessarily because they're set against the contingency of the council. The reason we set this grant thing about was because we had people come to us in the preceding council where we afterwards, the things that we'd have liked to have granted, had they made an offer, but we couldn't grant them anything. So we came up with the idea of putting £2,000 in there. Now, I would propose, whatever says, that we allow the preset meeting of the council to deliberate whether there's enough money in there, because that's all the councillors, not just us. If there's like Geraldine at preset raised a very good point that she would say, well, it's gone up to £6,000, it shouldn't go beyond that. We can make that decision at that meeting. What we don't have to do now, because we are in very uncertain times, taking what the mayor says and what Councillor Harvey says. We shouldn't make a decision tonight, because we are in very uncertain times, and we don't need to go over all that. And I think today, restricting ourselves for those uncertain times is the wrong thing to do. But preset can do what it likes.
Okay, right, thank you. Right, so who wants to propose we go with the recommendations? That is not have a cap on it, and we just go with what we've got written down. Right, do you want to show?
I've already proposed that.
Yeah, those two agree?
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, fine. Are those against?
2.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we're going with recommendations. Right, climate action, climate emergency action plan update, Appendix J. John?
I accept all of the changes kind of made. The only question I'd raise is, I know there's been some sickness that's got in the way, but I'm looking forward to seeing the report from the annual meeting that happened back in March, of all the ideas that came out of those discussions around climate change and ideas that town council has got. Everything else applies.
Robin?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, one of the actions which we took from Mayor Chair that began a meeting, and it was around the environment. And one of the things that flowed over that was the spring fair, which many of the things we did come up there. It might be worth getting a sort of some feedback from what we found out from that as well, which would feed back into the annual town meeting. Because many of the people that I saw at the annual town meeting, when I sat on the little chair, on and off, I like that little chair, and most of those people flowed through the event, through the day. So whatever we discussed in the evening, and we did say we were going to be having that event, they came to it. So I thought we had both events, we had a good feedback at both events from the public. So I think that a report would be useful, but it is unfortunate that the officer who wrote the report was clearly unwell and couldn't do it. And I expect it's more frustrating for her than it is for us, to be frankly honest, because it's one of the things she's really interested in. So, you know, maybe we could do a bit of combined stuff, because there were some interesting conversations going on in the spring fair, I thought.
Right, so we'll go for bringing the report back on at the annual town meeting.
Yeah, but that.
Yeah. Thank you. So is everybody happy with the Appendix J?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have any chair's announcement. You can, do you?
Chair, I might wanted to just remind you about the email I sent saying we're going to move the date of the Natural Resources meeting from the 4th of July to the 11th of July. That way, resources will be able to make any necessary decisions after, hopefully, the potential of the appointment of the new town clerk the week beginning 4th of July. But also, we will then arrange the equality training that I'm instructed to arrange for the evening of the 4th of July at 7 o'clock. So that evening will then be free.
Yeah.
On the 4th. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the being at the town council meeting, we'll be doing training.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll circulate that around to confirm it, but as this is resources.
Thank you. So date of next meeting is the 11th of July.
You learn quick, don't you?
Right, so routine private session, going to come